Hello YouTube and welcome back to the channel. In today's video I'm just going to show you my quick hip mobility routine that I use. I have consistently ran about 50-55 kilometers over the last kind of 8 or 9 weeks, and this week I've kind of a bit of a slow week in work, so I've got a bit of time where I can bring the volume up a little bit higher. I'm going to try and get over 60, maybe 70 or 80k run this week. And I find that when I get up around that kind of higher mileage, I start to get a little bit of tightness, tension build up around my hips. So I just use this really short, easy hip mobility routine. I can do this in work, so I don't have to get changed. I can do it in my work chinos, or I can just get on a chair and then get down on the floor and do this a couple of times. I try and do this once or twice a day if I can, because it just takes a couple of minutes. And I find that doing it between runs really helps that kind of hip mobility, hip function when I'm running. So try these out, let me know how it goes. First exercise I do is just sitting on a chair, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to push 2 knees off to one side. So as you can see, my right knee bends down in front of my right hip, and then my left leg is just mirroring that in the opposite direction. You can put your hands on your hips if you want. And then what I do is I just rotate over and then come over again. And I just, as I come across, I try and push that knee, as if I'm trying to push it underneath the chair. So come down and just rotate it around, and you can kind of rotate your hip joints with that as well. So I would start off, I would just get about maybe 10 of those all together. And you can do these before or after you go out for a run. It doesn't really matter which way. So if you get the hang of that one on the chair, and I would definitely suggest making sure you can do the one on the chair first, then you just sit down onto the ground in a similar type position, but this time the bum is rested on the ground and the knees are up to the same height as the hip because you're on the horizontal surface. So my right knee is right out in front of my right hip, my left knee is making a 90-degree bend, and I have my 2 hands behind my back, and then from there I kind of push my hips forwards, okay? And then you just rotate the whole lot over, push the hips forwards, and just rotate it back and across. Just nice and slowly. You can extend and flex that lower back if it wants to. Everybody has a kind of different morphology, so whichever way your back wants to bend, just let it go. But try and keep your feet fairly stationary and just get those hips to rotate and the knees to come down. And it's important, if you can, to get the knees to touch the ground as you rotate each one. From there then, I would go into a long lunge, drop the back knee down so that the back knee is resting on the ground in that lunge position. And then I'm going to have my left ankle is the one that's in front, my left foot is right under my left knee. And then from there, put my hands on my hips. I'm just going to push it all forwards and really start to open up the front side of that left or that right hip. So you're getting a stretch through that hip flexor region and just really open up the anterior part of that hip joint, really stressing the capsule. That's a fantastic way to open up the hips, because when we run, we tend to lean forward. So this part of the hip tends to get compressed when we run, particularly long distance and the later stages of a long distance run. So I'd hold that there. To progress that then, what you can do is just rotate away from the back leg. So if I'm in this position, pushing the hips forwards in this direction, then just rotate away. And holding that there, rotating away. You really feel that coming on. So to show you that looks like from the other side, I'll just switch the legs around, bring the right leg forwards, plant that ankle underneath the knee, and then from there, shift those hips forwards, let the knee drift past the ankle if you want, hold it in that position, really feel that left hip opening up, and then to progress it on is just rotate away from the back leg. So you feel a fantastic stretch through the anterior part of that left hip joint capsule. If on the last exercise we open up the anterior part of the hip joint, this time we're going to go for the posterior part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my hands just rested just behind me. I'm going to bring my right leg up onto my left knee. Okay, so right leg is up, or right ankle is up on left knee. From there, I'm going to lift the pelvis off the ground and then just drop it down. So you'll really feel that right posterior hip opening up, and then come back, let it come back, and then drop down. And just in and out like that a couple of times, and you'll really get a multi-directional stretch across that posterior hip joint capsule. You'll feel a bit of a stretch coming through all those glute muscles, piriformis, and the rest of the external rotators of that hip. Just drop it down, that's good. And relax. To show you what that looks like on the other side, just drop that right foot down. This time I'm going to bring the left foot up, so the left ankle comes up onto the right knee. Use the hands to lift the pelvis up, and then just drop it down. And again, I really feel that stressing and opening up the posterior part of my left hip joint. The last exercise I would do then would just be to get the inside, the interior or the medial section of the hip joint, is to bring the two legs out nice and wide. Okay, so get them right out as wide as you can, just as far as they'll pretty go without you stressing it too much. And then from there, just forward flex the hands down to the ground, so you feel a big hamstring stretch. And then from there, let's just start with a bend of the left knee, so keep the right leg straight, and then you're going to really open up the medial section of the right hip. So really feel that stretch coming down through the adductor muscles, but mainly just focusing on opening that hip joint capsule. If you want, you can push the glutes or the bum backwards, and you'll really feel it opening up that hip joint capsule. That's it. Bring the bum back to the midline, and then just bend that right knee, and this time bend the left, or straighten out the left knee by bending the right, lock out the left, and now we feel the stretch coming around into that left groin. So really hold that there. Couple of deep breaths, and when you feel you got a good intense stretch, if you want to increase it, just push that backside or bum backwards, and you'll really feel it coming right around into that medial hip joint capsule. That's good. And then just on that one, be careful, bring it back into the middle, and then just bring the legs in, walk them in nice and slowly. You don't want to come out of that too gregariously, or you could give yourself a little bit of a adductor strain. That's great, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know in the comments below if you like it, if there's anything that you would add or take out, or if there's any extras that you do, please pop them in. I'm always open to find out what anybody else is doing in terms of getting a bit of motion and mobility through those hip joints. Anyway, remember guys, run far, run fast, but most of all, run sensible.